10 years ago, the job did not exist. Today, club after club employs somebody whose entire salary is paid to think about corners. And last season, more than a quarter of every goal scored in the league came from a dead ball, the highest share ever recorded. So this isn't a fad, and it isn't just clubs copying Arsenal. Something changed about football itself, and it changed in a way that made 20 seconds of stopped clock the most valuable real estate on the pitch. Let's show the working. Start with the answer everybody gives. Arsenal hired a specialist. The specialist worked. Everyone else panicked and hired one too. Football does this constantly. For a while, every club wanted a false nine. Then everybody had to play out from the back. Then everybody had to press. The set-piece coach looks like the next one of those, and the timeline fits almost too neatly. Nicolas Jova was appointed at Arsenal in July 2021. At the start of that season, you could count the clubs with a dedicated set-piece coach on one hand. Arsenal then went and broke the Premier League record for goals scored from corners. And within a few years, the specialist had gone from oddity to fixture. So far, so ordinary. Here's the part that isn't. Clubs copy each other's strikers every single summer and mostly get nothing for it because whatever made him good doesn't come in the suitcase. Copying usually fails. This copy worked almost everywhere it was tried. And that tells you the goals were sitting there unclaimed before anybody went looking for them. Arsenal didn't invent the opportunity. They proved it was there, and there's a difference. Verdict: 6 out of 10. It set the timing and the panic. It didn't create the margin. Follow the money, because that's what the clubs did. Ted Knutson, who ran analytics at Brentford and at Midtjylland, put a number on the opportunity. An average team scores about 0.3 goals a game from set pieces. With a specialist analyzing them and coaching them properly, he reckoned you could push that toward 0.8. Across a season, that's in the region of 20 extra goals. Now price it. 20 goals a season is what an elite striker gives you, and an elite striker costs a 9-figure fee before you've paid him a penny in wages. A coach costs a salary. There is no other line on a football club's books where the goals per pound arithmetic is anywhere near that lopsided. It is, straightforwardly, the cheapest thing you can buy in the sport, which is why the biggest clubs weren't the ones who found it. It was the ones who were counting. Midtjylland, in Denmark, scored close to half their goals from set pieces in 2014-15. Half. Their owner also owned Brentford, who that same season had the third worst set-piece record in the championship. The following year, Brentford hired Gianni Vio, an Italian who had spent a career building dead ball routines and who became the first specialist set-piece coach in English football. That was over a decade ago. It took the rest of the league most of that decade to follow, and when they did, they weren't discovering a new idea. They were finally reading a price tag that had been sitting on the shelf the whole time. Verdict: 7 out of 10, 20 goals for the price of a salary. So the goals were cheap. That still doesn't explain why the rush came now instead of in 2016. For that, you have to look away from set pieces completely at what was happening to the rest of the game. While dead ball goals climbed, open play got harder. Goals from open play fell to their lowest level in well over a decade. And this was not a run of bad finishing. The expected goals from open play dropped as well, across most of the league. The chances themselves stopped arriving. What you're watching there is the defensive answer to the football of the early 2020s. That era was high pressing, high scoring, enormously good fun, and, to a certain kind of coach, a problem to be solved. Blocks got more compact, rest defenses got more disciplined, the space between the lines that a good possession side used to live in got closed off, week by people who had studied exactly how it was being found. And here's what that does to a corner. A corner didn't get better. It's the same corner it has always been. Same flag, same arc, same 18-yard box. Its value went up because everything around it went down. When every other route to a goal gets more expensive, the one that stayed flat becomes the best asset you own. Which also tells you something about the sport underneath all this. Football has always been a low-scoring game where a handful of moments decide everything, and squeezing open play makes that more true, not less. There's a whole video on exactly that, why the best team doesn't always win. Cards up there, verdict, 8 out of 10. Set pieces won by standing still. So, cheap goals in a game where every other route to one was closing. That's a good story about incentives. It still isn't the answer, because it doesn't explain why this phase of football got the specialist and not some other one. Here it is. A set piece is the only part of football with a fixed starting position. Think about what that actually means. The ball is stationary, on a spot you knew about in advance. Every player's position is known because you chose it. The clock is stopped, which hands you something the sport almost never gives anybody. About 20 seconds to arrange 11 human beings exactly the way you arranged them on Thursday. And then it happens again, and again. More than 100 times a season with the same geometry every time. Nothing else in football works like that. Open play is continuous and contingent. The situation you trained on Thursday never quite turns up on Saturday. So what a coach can teach is principles and habits, and then hope. You can't rehearse it because there's nothing stable there to rehearse. A corner is the same problem, handed to you over and over, which makes it the only phase you can write a genuine playbook for, and, just as importantly, the only phase where the data can tell you whether the playbook worked, because one attempt is properly comparable to the next. Call it the dead 20. 20 seconds of stopped clock, the only rehearsable football there is. Football spent a century getting extremely good at the part of the game it could never practice, and left the part it could almost completely alone. Nobody was being stupid about that. It just looked like the boring bit. Verdict, 9 out of 10. The only part of the game you can actually practice. And then, right at the end of the story, the laws joined in. From the 2025-26 season, a goalkeeper who holds onto the ball for more than 8 seconds concedes a corner. Not an indirect free kick, which is what the old law threatened and referees almost never gave. A corner. IFAB chose that deliberately. Keepers hate conceding corners, so it actually deters the time wasting, and a corner takes seconds to set, where an indirect free kick inside a crowded penalty area does not. Hold on too long a second time and you get a warning. A third time and it's a yellow card. Read that as an incentive rather than a piece of housekeeping, and it's remarkable. For the first time in the history of the laws, football manufactures set pieces as a punishment. The rulebook hands out corners now, and the clubs who'd already hired the specialist, already built the routines, already spent 2 seasons rehearsing, they got handed the extra volume for nothing. That same season produced the highest share of goals from dead balls the league has ever recorded. It would be neat to say the law change caused all this. It didn't. It arrived years after the analytics clubs worked it out, and a couple of seasons after everybody else started copying them. It turned up late and paid the people who were already standing there. Verdict, 6 out of 10. It didn't start the fire, it paid the arsonists. So, why does every club suddenly have a set-piece coach? Arsenal set the clock running, and the panic with it. That part of the popular answer is real, and it's worth 6 out of 10. But it's the smallest thing on the list. Open play closed and made the dead ball the best value thing on the pitch. 20 goals a season for the price of a salary is the cheapest deal in the sport. And above all, a set-piece is the only 20 seconds of football that stays still long enough to be practiced. The one place a plan survives contact with a Saturday afternoon. Then the rulebook turned up and started handing out extra ones. There's a last thing worth saying, and it isn't flattering. Plenty of people think all this has made the league worse to watch. More bodies in the box, more standing around waiting for a delivery, fewer of the flowing 20-pass moves the sport puts in its own adverts. That's a fair complaint, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But it isn't a fashion, and it isn't an accident. It's what happens when a sport finally notices the one part of itself it was allowed to script. So So here's the verdict, ranked by how much of it each one actually explains. The dead 20. The fixed, rehearsable start state, 9 out of 10. The closing of open play, 8. Cost arbitrage, the cheapest goals on the market, 7. The Arsenal effect, 6. It set the timing, not the margin. And the law changes. 6. Which leaves the verdict itself. Every club hired a set-piece coach because the set-piece is the only part of football you can rehearse, and open play stopped paying. That's the why. The next 4 are the how. Every corner routine, every free kick strategy, every throw-in, every goal kick, taken apart one at a time. Your next watch is on screen. And tell me below, has all this made football worse to watch or just harder to defend?